How easily can you communicate what you do, what your service or product is in a way that get people to lean in, right? So we may call this like our elevator pitch and all of that stuff, but is there a way, or are you 100% sure that verbally you're communicating what you do? And not only communicating what you do, but in a way that gets people excited and interested. Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Marketing for Startups podcast. I'm so happy you're here. We're talking about branding stuff this week. And this is a really juicy topic because it's so important what we're going to talk about today. And it's so simple. And it's some silly mistakes that a lot of businesses make. I've fallen victim to making the mistake that we're going to talk about this week. But don't worry, it's really easy to fix. We're going to talk about how to clearly communicate your business, your brand, and make that deeper connection with your audience. Okay, so before we dive in, there are two little action items. First is I have a really great free resource that is accompanying this episode. It is a guide on how to create a brand or to up-level your brand to be a brand that gets people talking and one that helps sell your service or product for you. And you can grab that free guide at Ugly Ventures, UGLI, Ugly Ventures, all one word, .com/brand. So if you go to uglyventures.com/brand, you can grab that free guide, which is going to kind of accompany this episode in a way. I'll help you get started. And the next is, first of all, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you so much. And I hope that you get a lot of value out of these episodes. And if you do, it would mean so, so much to me if you shared it with an entrepreneurial friend, because entrepreneurship is ugly at times, right? And it is difficult, and we need all the support that we can to kind of unravel our marketing, to unravel sales, and understand how to get traction and growth and success in our business. And that is why I am here. So thank you again for being here. And let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. So why are we talking about clear communication? Well, I think sometimes we are very unclear. All of us fall victim to this, and we may not even realize it. So let's start with a very tangible example. If you are at a networking event, right, or you're at a conference, how easily can you communicate what you do, what your service or product is, in a way that get people to lean in, right? So we may call this like our elevator pitch and all of that stuff, but is there a way, or are you 100% sure that verbally you're communicating what you do? And not only communicating what you do, but in a way that gets people excited and interested. Because this is a really, really important piece of the puzzle, right? Not only do we want people to know what we do and how we serve, we want them to be interested in what we do. And there's a whole formula that you can apply to kind of figure out what way can you communicate your product or service in a way that's going to get people to listen. And I recommend checking out the story brand framework. So in my accelerator, which is launching soon, and I'll tell you all about that in upcoming weeks episodes, but in the marketing accelerator, the sales and marketing accelerator, we go through this process of building out your marketing message. But the short of it is, how are we going to connect? How are we going to pique interest? And it is about making your customer, your prospect, the hero of the story. Okay. And what that means is, when we're communicating our product or service, we're not just telling that prospect how great we are and what we do. We're really communicating the transformation that our product or service offers, because in doing that, your prospect understands how your product or service will help improve their lives. Because at the end of the day, that's why we exist. We exist to serve our clients, right? We serve to add value in the lives of our customers. And so, in order to communicate that clearly, you want to be sharing what that transformation is. So, some really quick examples of this could be, you know, if you're an accountant, okay, you can introduce yourself as an accountant, full stop. That's not that interesting. But if you lead with the benefits, the transformation, and you say, well, I help businesses uncover uh, ways of increasing their revenue by eliminating waste in their financial sector, something like, right? What you're doing in that way is you're piquing the interest of that target, right? That business owner, because you're not just an accountant, you actually are helping them uncover ways to save money in their business. So that is an example of communicating benefit. So we communicate clearly what we do, we connect with those prospects, and we become much more interesting to them. So it's really important to communicate clearly our product or service. And as you're kind of thinking about how you act in like these networking groups and these conferences and how you introduce yourself in person, now in your business in person, I want you now to look at your website. I want you now to look at your calls to action, the buttons. What do they say? I want you to look at your sales pages, your contact us pages, and apply the same principle. Is it very clear, not only what your product or service does and the transformation it offers, but is it clear what the next steps should be? So clarity is really, really important. And what stops us from being clear? So there's two major dangers, sort of dangerous things that kind of happen as human beings that can make it very unclear what our product or service is and how we serve and what next steps we want people to take with us. So the first is jargon. So we can call this like the curse of the expert, right? But sometimes we use like industry jargon too much in our communication to a default. And so I want you to think like, are you expressing the benefits, the features, the things that you do, the transformation in terms of jargon, acronyms? So when we're in it in our business or we're in a particular vertical or industry, right? To us, these acronyms and this jargon is part of our day-to-day communication, our nomenclature. Maybe when we're working with clients, we use this terminology. But the thing you need to remember is oftentimes people don't know what this certain jargon means, or they don't know what certain acronyms mean, and they're not going to ask you. They're just going to tune out. And this is really poses a big problem. I'll give you an example in my own life. So I work as a fractional chief marketing officer, right? That is the business I've built for the past 10 years. And I often introduce myself as a fractional CMO because many founders, they know CMO is chief marketing officer. But I realized a while ago that actually not everyone knows what a CMO is. And even if they like have heard of chief marketing officer, they've heard the acronym, but maybe they don't remember what it means. And perhaps that term is not actually going to spark within them something that turns on this like clicker of thinking they need what I provide. Maybe that acronym sort of creates this disconnect, right? Whereas opposed to me introducing myself and saying, I help founders create sales focused marketing strategies and build an execution team to increase revenue. Well, that at least is much clearer on what I can do to help them rather than a CMO, right? I'm going, or even better, I mean, that's not even a very good speech I just said, but you could say, I help founders double their revenue through sales focused marketing plans and execution. Something like that, right? That's going to pique the interest because you're inviting people kind of into this narrative of, I'm going to help you increase your revenue. And it sort of causes this question in their head of saying, well, how do you do that? That's something that I want, right? So be careful using jargon and acronyms. And again, as a fractional chief marketing officer, people don't even sometimes know what fractional chief marketing officer or fractional executive even is. A lot of people don't. So don't be assuming that everyone understands the jargon and the acronyms that you use for whatever vertical that you work in. But the other trap that you could fall into, the other kind of dangerous trap, is trying to be too clever and too witty or too sarcastic. Because again, a lot of times your audience just won't get it. Either they won't get it, or it's going to be too confusing, or take too much time for them to figure out, or being really clever and sarcastic and all that actually doesn't really, maybe it gets like a chuckle, it makes people smile, but it doesn't really move people into action. So I want to kind of zoom out in this conversation, because the major part of this is something that I've been saying a lot lately, which is your customers, they only really care about themselves because that's like all they have the bandwidth for in their busy day, right? So we want to make sure that it's very easy and clear and quick for our prospects to know what we do and how we serve them, okay? Because if we're making them work a little bit too hard to figure it out, not only what we do, what their transformation could be, right? But also like, what are the next steps, right? So when we're pitching ourselves or on our website, we want to invite people into this narrative of how we help them and the transformation that we facilitate and how we make their lives better. But then we can't forget about clear calls to action, right? So the next step is book a demo. The next step is join my email list. The next step is grab this free template. Whatever it is, we want to make sure that our instructions are also very clear. Clarity is so, so important. So let's dig a little bit into like, what does clarity help us do? So when we're clearly communicating with our audience, we're actually creating a deeper connection with them. So as I said, we're going to be understanding that the needs, wants, and desires, we pay attention to their needs, wants, and desires of our prospect. That is the most important thing for us to understand. And when we clearly communicate that back to them, right, we mirror their desires, needs, fears. We communicate it back to them, and then we position our service or product as the solution. Well, we are showing them that we understand them, right? We're creating empathy. And that empathy that we're creating with our audience, our prospects, customers, clients, when we mirror back to them, we're actually creating that relationship. We're building that relationship because our prospect, our audience, they feel understood by us. And in feeling understood, then they begin to make that connection on how your service or product could help them personally. And so when we're kind of making our communication too jargony, too clever, too witty, too whatever, we sometimes can miss that opportunity because it's not maybe going to hit to the heart of our prospect, which is what we want. We want our communication to really tap into those deep needs or desires. Now, by the way, it doesn't need to be all that serious. Your product or service could be serving the need of just of joy, of entertainment. That also is a need, a human need, right? But being clear on what your client audience wants and needs, and then matching that communication, those messaging to sort of match, to mirror back what they need and also explaining that transformation that you offer. So creating deeper connections. The next thing that clear communication does is it helps you to cut through the noise. So we are bombarded, as we know, by just so much information, so much scrolling and so many different brands and all of this stuff. But when you hit on that communication, that message that hits to the heart of your target client and that it clearly communicates, right? Mirrors their problem, need, and desire back to them, and also shares your product or service and how it will help. Well, that really helps cut through the noise, because as you're scrolling quickly, and this is a test that you can do for yourself, really understand what are the email subject lines? What are the ad copy? Which are the posts? What are the reels? What are the things that make you stop scrolling? And when you pay attention to what those pieces of content are that actually speak to you, you can begin to kind of map out what you care about. Like what's kind of running through your subconscious during the day that's going to make you kind of stop and look twice. I love doing this with email subject lines. I love saving emails that I love, because email is such an important and powerful tool for your business. Whenever I see, I'm on everyone's email list because I love getting promotional emails and brand emails. I just love it. I think that there's some really creative work that's done by email. But, a lot of times my inbox is flooded. So I just erase, like most of us. But for every 10 emails I erase, there's probably one that stops me in my tracks. And it makes me feel enticed to click through. And if you should start noticing that in your own life, because that's going to be a big clue to how you can grab your own audience's attention, right? Using some of these strategies that are working on you and mirror it back to your own audience, your prospects. So it's a really good tool. But the bigger point here is that when the messaging is done correctly, you actually can cut through the noise. And the proof is that it happens to you every day, right? You're scrolling, you're erasing emails, but things catch your eye. And more times than not, it's going to be something that speaks to some desire that you have. Another really good example is, or what I'm seeing that is working really well, is these very colloquial emails, like very friendly ones that are messages that you would send to your best friend or to your siblings or something. I got a message from a brand this morning. The subject line was just, "Hey, ... And I loved that because it made me click in, and it made me, it sort of spoke to my desire to really be connecting with the people that I love and that I care about during the day when I'm just in work mode, right? But it is a pattern interrupter. And a lot of times when we get really the jargony, kind of super clever, witty, takes too much time to kind of unravel stuff, is what a lot of brands do. And that's why it just is noise, because it just takes too much effort to like figure out what the heck is going on, right? So what else can clear communication do for your business? So clear communication also builds trust. So being really clear on how you serve, the transformation your service or product offers to your prospects, what the next steps are, what is the pricing, right? Clarity. What do they get? What is the level? What happens on the demo call? Like spelling it out for people creates trust and safety, because we don't think about it this way, but the reality is, what is the difference between, or what is that chasm between, your client deciding to buy the product, right? Click buy now or not. Well, a lot of times there is that feeling of insecurity, or that is a safety issue, right? Now, your product or service is promising this transformation is going to do X, Y, and Z. But of course, before the client actually is using the product or, has bought it, there's this question, this unknown of whether it's actually going to work and whether things are going to do what they say they're going to do, right? That is the risk that every buyer makes. And we ourselves do it every time that we purchase something as well. So we want to build trust. We want things to be very clear to our prospects. So there's no room for them to feel insecure because the process is transparent. The communication is clear, right? And this helps to build that like, know, and trust factor that will get folks ready to purchase with you, right? Let's not play games. But it comes in the way that we kind of build that trust is how clearly are we communicating all these things I'm talking about, but also, do we have our, is it clear our return policies? Is it clear our guarantees, right? Not being muffled up with jargon or creative, funny, cute things, just making sure people have the information that they need to make an informed decision. So let's talk a minute about when can we use wit and humor. So I do think that there is a lot of value in very sparingly using wit and humor. And you want to make sure that it doesn't muffle up your big, most important communication touch points. In fact, I read Anne Handley's book called Everybody Writes, which is a wonderful book about copywriting. And she has a really great suggestion about using kind of cleverness, wit, and humor in very unexpected places. So, for example, that bit of text that comes up when someone subscribes to your newsletter, right? That sort of thank you message that comes up, or, after someone subscribes, the first email that they get from you, or, in your terms and conditions, you can maybe, like when things that are otherwise dull, you can add some wit and humor, some surprise. What does the text on your button say, right? There's a lot of different ways you can sprinkle it in, but you want to make sure, your headline top above the fold on your website, you best believe that needs to be absolutely clear. No puns, no funny word plays, just clear what you do, because you've got that short amount of time to grab attention, right? The cleverness, the wit, the personality, right, can really be sprinkled through in other places that could be maybe more supplementary copy rather than your major, most important copy, right? So it's, and by using kind of humor and wit and sarcasm more sparingly, it becomes more powerful, right? Because it's unexpected, it throws people off guard. And when done right, being clever is the way that you can really make those deeper connections when it's used in this sparing way, right? And the other piece I could say also about jargon and acronyms and things like that, they also can be used sparingly and also with a lot of thought, right? Because in some moments, using a specific jargon will create a sense of community, right? So again, be very careful because as I mentioned before, CMO, a lot of people don't know what it is, right? And even in the entrepreneurial space, I would say maybe, it could be 50-50 of people really knowing what CMO is, which surprised me, but it's sort of what I found. But there is a lot of different jargon that entrepreneurs that, we all use in startup world that I wouldn't maybe use in other businesses, such as, lean, right? Like operating a lean operation, right? This idea of being lean, or, and a big one that I guess came of the past couple of years is this idea of like saying a PPT versus deck, right? Deck became very like in vogue because people would put decks together for investors, and then everyone started calling them decks. But still, if you go to like, old school industries, they're still calling them like, a PPTs, right? So you can be kind of very selective on what terminologies you're using that will fit your specific target. But again, be careful and always err on the side of caution. Just as clear as you can be, definitely always lean in that direction, right? And then the last thing I want to point out is, having clear communication is that catalyst for action, right? You want to make it clear what you do, how you serve, what that transformation is, what the next step is, because doing all of that is going to move people into action more, right? Because they're going to, it's like A plus B equals C. They'll know that A, my problem, plus B, your solution is going to equal C, the goal that I want to get to. And you want to make it that easy in people's minds because there is so much noise out there. We are getting dozens and dozens of brand emails a day. We are seeing hundreds of businesses on social media a day scrolling through so quickly, right? So as clear and precise as you can be, the better. I'm going to leave you with the last bit of the last tip, the kind of actionable tip of the day, okay? The actionable tip of the day is two parts. So two tips, okay? First is to take an audit. Take an audit of your website, of your call to action, of your buttons, any ads that you're running, and ask yourself, is this super duper clear what I'm offering, what I'm asking people to do, what their transformation is? Am I speaking to their pain points? Is this all very clear? And if you're unsure, do a little test. Ask some folks to look at your website. When we're doing a UX, like a user experience upgrade when I'm doing that for clients, the designer does something called the 5-second test, where a good design team will do this. They will put your website homepage out to a handful of folks, 5 to 10 people, maybe other designers or people that they work with, and they will say, okay, click on the site. You're going to set a 5-second timer and you're going to then shut it down and you're going to answer some questions for me. What does this company do? Right? Who do they serve? How can they help you? What is the product? Right? And that's a really good way that you can make sure that you're communicating clearly through your homepage, top of the fold. First thing that people see, that it's all very clear. This is the most important and crucial part of your whole business, right? That's like the storefront, right? Your website, top above the fold. So you want to make sure that that's very clear, and you can run a little test. Get 5 to 10 friends, family members, colleagues, or whatever to do that for you. Make sure that everything's really clear. And 5 seconds is generous, because if we're going to be measuring people that bounce off your site, that's because they're bouncing off in under 3 seconds, right? So a bounce rate is usually calculated as like 3 seconds or under 2 seconds. So we have a very short amount of time to capture attention, right? And that website test is really great, because if you get that website communication right, you can do similar, you can use that messaging to sort of upgrade your social media profiles by using those phrases and things like that. So this is a really useful exercise to go through. But the next piece of it, the second part of this actionable step, is to understand that communication is a process. Like, understanding what's really going to hit is a process. Oftentimes, when we don't see production on lead magnets, or we don't see production on sales pages, our initial reaction is, let's just throw the baby out with the bathwater and just do it all over again. Start from scratch. But that is a waste of time. I've fallen victim to doing that, of course, in my life, and we all kind of fall victim to that. But the reality is, and what I've seen in my 15 years as a fractional chief marketing officer, as a marketing director, right? That's what I am. I'm a marketing director, which is easier for people to understand. But in leading teams and seeing progress, right? Improvements of conversion rates, it's always about those little tweaks. It's really those little tweaks. It could just be the way you phrase the same thing, right? You just do it in a different way and it's going to connect, it's going to hit, right? So your ads, the same thing. Your website copy, those headlines on website copy, the blog headlines, all those things. Oftentimes, it's just that 10-degree shift that you need to make that's going to hit on the heartstrings of your audience, right? So those 2 action steps, right? Let's kind of take an audit of our website, make sure it's super clear, and then run some tests, do some A/B testing, right? If you think that a landing page is not converting well, instead of like scrapping it and starting all over again, what are some small improvements that you can make? And then you can test, right? You can put out a new version of it and have that go for a month and see if you get any better results. Because the communication is it's about finessing, right? Those actual words you're using. And by the way, the images also communicate your message, right? It's by really testing and iterating on those the visuals, the copy, 10 degrees. That's really going to get you to your results. Okay. And communication is so important. And last but not least, communication is something that you should revisit often, because as the world changes, as the economy changes, different worries come to the surface of our audience and our target client, right? We get preoccupied with different things that are going on in the world. And you always want to have that sort of touchstone, that sort of baseline to make sure, is my communication landing now with my audience? Because that will change. And so it's always good to revisit that. Your website copy, the copy for social, the copy for ads, the headlines on your blogs and newsletters. All of that stuff is not a set it and forget it thing. So I hope I've made a good case for why you should really be paying attention to how clearly you're communicating your products, your service, the transformation you offer, the benefits of your client, connecting with their pain points. It is really the difference between success and failure in your sales and your marketing. Okay. So that's it for this week. If you have any more questions or you want me to dive deeper into any of these strategies, just, email me. If you're not on my email list, you should be. You can go to uglyventures.com, UGLI ventures.com. And from there, you can download there's a lot of free good tools there. I got a bunch of free guides, but you can also just sign up for the newsletter there as well. If you just click on resources. So uglyventures.com/resources, everything is there, the guides, the newsletter. But if you do get my newsletter, just hit reply. I answer them. I love hearing your feedback, and I will create any episodes that you need. I can go deeper. We can get to a different topic. Just let me know. All right. See you back here next week, and keep going. I'm so proud of you. You're doing awesome. Okay. So if no one's told you lately, you're kicking ass. And I know you're going to reach unicorn status. You just got to keep going. All right. See you next week.